Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. In today's video we'll be learning how to set up the Octane Render in Blender to use it to create very nice space scenes in a very short period of time, 5 minutes tops. Now it's important to understand that Blender Octane is something that you will have to get from the website from Octane. Now I'm going to quickly put in a short video of how to do that and fully explain very quickly what you're doing to set it up, because setting up Octane is more of a nuisance than difficult. I'll show you how to quickly do that. But then once we get Octane up and running, I'll show you how to quickly create a space scene in Blender in which you have like a space station like in this image, and basically we can go from that image to a render that looks like this, for example, or maybe something like this. And what you need to understand is that doing this is very simple. It doesn't require any incredible tools. You're going to download the free software, which is obviously Blender with Octane, and you're also going to download the software called JSplacement, which allows you to generate height maps very easily that generally have this very techno look to them. I think a lot of people may have heard about these. You can use them with Blender cycles as well. One of the reasons why I'm using Octane is because the subdivision of the displacement is so nice in Octane. It's almost flawless. I wouldn't say it's perfect. There are definitely some issues in there. If you're careful to, if you look careful enough, you might see some issues. But I think they're very minimal and most of the time not even visible, because the displacement method that Octane is using is just fantastic. Now, I am not a professional in Octane rendering. I have just started using it myself, but I am amazed by its potential and just how easy it is to set up some really nice scope images. So what I'm suggesting is you stick around. We'll get to the end of the video and I'm sure you'll be able to put your own scene together quite easily. Now, part of this whole thing, I am going to add my project file, this project file of this space scene. I am going to add it into my Nebula project for Blender as well, that you can get off of ArtStation or Gumroad. Please bear in mind, if you're a fan of Unreal Engine, you can go and get my space scenes from my ArtStation or Gumroad store as well. Or if you want that Nebula generator for Blender, you can go and get that as well. They're very cheap. They're the price of a coffee. And I do enjoy a coffee. If you want to buy me a coffee for the content that I put up, just feel free to buy my projects and then you can explore them and use them. Or consider becoming a Patreon, which again supports me and you get access to all the content that I put out so far anyway, as I said, by becoming a Patreon. So without any more delays, let's begin the tutorial. So on the Octane website, what you want to do is you want to go to Downloads and log into your account. You have to create an account, and then once you've done that, just look for in the download section, but not your personal account download section, because there's not going to be anything there. You haven't really downloaded, you haven't yet set it up. But just go on the main page of Octane, and then go into the render tab, and then just select Octane Render. And over in here, you'll find free trial. Press that. And then switch over to Octane Render Prime. And then try now. And you've got Windows, the Windows version, which you can then start downloading. And then you've got the Octane server. You've got to get these both, otherwise it won't work. So just save them both to your computer and then install them. This is quite straightforward. It's just a simple installation for both of these things. Installing Octane is very straightforward. Just press a couple of next and finishes. For some reason my screen just turned black. But then I've pre-recorded this just to show you, but it's very simple. I'm just going to let it go, very fast from here. Very important to search for Blender Octane Edition when you want to run this with actual, this actual version. It's going to be 2.93. Unfortunately, there's no new version. Go into your add-ons and search for Octane, and then make sure you enable it. Once that's enabled, you will get this sort of pop-up where it asks you to download this additional content for it, which is quite straightforward. Just do that. Once it finishes, you're almost there to start using it. Once you got the package downloaded, it will ask you to log in again to your account. Again, just put in the whatever account you've created. And that should be that for this. You might get an error like the one that you're seeing right here, and this is to do because maybe you have the same account on another computer where you're using Octane Render. In order to use it on your computer, because Octane is limited for the trial version, is limited only to one GPU at a time, you need to disable it on the other device in order to bring it to this device. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. So you might be tempted to go into your subscriptions on the website to disable the computer that you've got Octane installed, a different GPU, a different computer. But if you do this, as you can see, you will lose an unlock point from here. So you don't want to use the website to do this. Instead, what you want to do is on the computer that you're on, go in and install Octane Blender and the server on that computer, and then come back to your computer where you want to install it. And then this should work if you've logged in. Just turn on Octane rendering in Blender and then switch over to the viewport. If it shows in black, just close Blender, just close the program completely. So shut down Blender, because what you're seeing, your server will be active. This is how it needs to show up. Your server for Octane needs to show up this way. And then if you turn it on again, you'll see that if you switch over again and from Eevee to Octane and then go into shaded mode, this will work. It needs to look like this. Now, what I'm trying to explain here is that before you run Blender for Octane, you first need to go into the server and turn the server on, and then move on into opening Blender for Octane. But if you've already done this on a different computer, then you need to shut it down over there before you can do it on your new computer. You can only do this with one GPU at a time. So yeah, that's about it in terms of installing it. So let's begin the tutorial. Now, the first thing we want to do in Octane Render or in Blender with Octane Render enabled is obviously, you've got the render engine set up as to Octane, and we need to set up our scene. And because we're making a space scene, then we need the scene to be quite dimly lit, at least when we start the render. So we can't have, what we're seeing right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these elements. Well, I'm just going to leave the camera because the camera is quite useful. You don't need a light because lights in Octane function, you can create lights just like you do in Cycles using objects. So we've deleted that. We want to first go, I'm just going to click the shading tab, which is quite useful. And then I'm going to change my shader option to world. And I have a daylight system set up. Let me just make this a bit bigger. I've got a daylight environment, sun direction, and a daylight, daylight environment linked to the surface, and an Octane environment there. But I don't need any of these, so I'm just going to delete them. Instead, I'm going to search for texture environment, and I'm going to plug that into the Octane environment. But we've got nothing in here as of yet. So what I've done is I've gone along to, let me just get my folder. I've got a texture folder right here, and I've got an 8K stars Milky Way. Now you can get this off of this website. So this solar system scope, just go onto this website and then you can explore and search for textures. And these are all free textures to be used by yourselves in your projects. So if you get that texture, which is the one that I've got right here, you can drag that in. So I am then going to plug this into the texture, and you can see now that this texture has been added to our environment. And we've got a power and a gamma. I would definitely suggest leaving the gamma where it is, but if you put this to 1, you can see it brings up more of the texture, but you can also see some of the some of this fringing going on around here. So increasing the gamma gets rid of that, or you can play around with the power. So the less power you got, the darker it gets. But again, these are settings that you're going to have to play along, around with when you set up your scene, depending on whatever you want to do and whatever type of cube map you're using. This is an environment map, so it's now pretty much covering our entire scene. And now if I press numpad 0 on the keyboard, this will take me to my camera view. What I like to do is select my camera and then go into the camera settings. You'll see that they're quite different in Blender Octane Render compared to the camera that you normally get with Cycles or Eevee. And we're going to go through some of these settings in a bit, but the first thing I want to do is in the viewport display, you can go to pass part out, or whatever it's called, and you can put that to 100%, which then blackens anything that the camera is not viewing if you put it at 100, at 1. And I do that because I want to not get distracted by anything else outside the camera view. Now I'm going to press Shift A on the keyboard and add a cylinder. If I can escape the camera view, I can also go into this view as well. The cylinder, I'm going to put at 64 subdivisions and object shade to smooth. Now, what I want to do is I want to turn my cube to 90 degrees that way. So that is just on the Z-axis, 90 degrees. If I press 0 on the keyboard, you'll notice that the cube is facing me. So I can now scale it, turn it around on the Z-axis again, maybe put it to 1 to the side like that, which is, depending on whatever you want to achieve. And I'm going to go into edit mode, select this face, press I on the keyboard, which means inset. So then I'm going to inset once again, and then G and the X-axis to take this face inward like that. And that's just me doing some really basic sort of modeling there, to just give this cylinder a shape. Now, if we go back into our, into our view, you'll notice that we can't really see the cylinder. That's because we have no light source. So I'm just going to rename the cylinder to, I don't know, Space Station, and then I'm going to Shift A and add a mesh, and that's going to be a UV sphere. That should work just fine. Let's make it a bit smaller. Let's just go back into this solid mode, and we don't need to do anything to the sphere apart from adding a new material to it. So I'm just going to bring the sphere somewhere around here, and it's important that when you add the sphere material, you use the right type of emission. It's basically we're going to add an emission to the sphere. So let's just switch over to our object material, add a new material for the sphere. This is going to add a universal material. You can delete that and instead search for a diffuse material. Bear in mind that Octane Render has its own set of library of nodes. So Octane Render is not difficult to use, at least not to achieve some very basic results, like in a way what we're trying to achieve here. So you don't have to really go in depth with it to fully understand what it's doing. Honestly, I've learned Octane Render and the basics of it in less than an hour. There's a YouTube video from the actual developers that pretty much explains how to set it up. So, but Blender with Octane Render already downloaded pretty much comes with the pre-configured sort of settings for it. Now, in the material, as I said, we've got the diffuse material, and then we're also going to type in an emission and select the black body emission. And we're going to put our emission output into emission, and then the material output into the surface. Now, if we go back into rendering, our sphere is now casting some light, which is quite nice. So we'll just bring it somewhere where, I don't know, it's going to give us sort of a nice effect. And we can increase its power. So if we put that to 500, you'll see a lot more. And you can see how fast Octane is, by the way. This is at 100 samples. But if we would press F12 right now to render, and by the way, you can't render unless you switch over to solid mode. You'll see that the rendering is it's almost done. It's at 2 out of 500 frames, but we can't really see much because our sphere isn't emitting too much light. Now let's just go back into our render view. One thing that we want to do to the sphere itself, I am going to go in my, over here into the Octane settings, I believe it was. Let me just have a look. Yeah, so you've got in here camera visibility, shadow visibility. If you delete the camera visibility, then this sphere will not be visible in your render, which is quite useful. Now you can see in the viewport, we're getting a bit more light than what we did in the render. So I would advise you crank up the power of the emission to about 1000 for now. We'll obviously play around with this setting as we go around just to see what we're going to use. And now you can change camera settings. Sorry, not there. I just wanted to go into you can change your camera settings in here, or you can press N on the keyboard, click Octane, and then you've got two options. So it says here Octane camera image preview. You can find that in the camera settings as well. But if you click both of these options, now you override. Now you can work around with the exposure, gamma, vignette, or anything like that if you want to add those. And I definitely suggest you add vignette into a space scene. It generally works quite well. And then you've got this Octane post-process preview, which is also, you can click the override button. The reason why you've got to override from here is this is going to affect all of your cameras. While if you go into the camera settings, that's going to affect only that particular camera's vision. But we're doing it for all the cameras since we're only going to have one camera anyway. So one important thing to do here is maybe add some, add some bloom. Maybe you want to add some glare as well. It really all depends, but it all depends on what's the scene that you're building. But you saw that the bloom pretty much adds exactly what it says. It's adding some bloom. We obviously still don't have enough power from our light source, and I've just added a bit more there. Obviously, the diffuse over here will not change the color of your light, and I believe to change the color of the light, you need to bring in a texture. So in here, you just put in a RGB color, so you put that into the texture and then you can change it to whatever you want. And as you can see, just because I'm doing that already, I'm getting a lot more light. But we'll leave it to a default sort of state, which is white. We're not adding anything to that light. But we've got our space station in here, but we're not really seeing anything interesting about it. The first thing we want to do is we want to edit the UVs. And that's quite simple, and I'll show you a method of how to easily unwrap your cylinder without having any sort of real stretched UVs, which is very important for the displacement that we're going to be doing. Okay, with the space station selected or cylinder, just go into UV editing, and if we select the cylinder and press tab, we'll go into edit mode. We can select all of it, and you can see the UVs that Blender already has done for us, but it's not ideal. So if we go into edge mode, we can shift alt around to select that part over there, and we can right click and then say mark seam. Then we can go over here, so all these edges like that. Again, we want to mark seam. At the back, you want to mark these seams as well. Obviously, I'm not even capping these for now. These faces, they're not that important. But one thing we want to do is alt click one of these edges so it goes all around, and then mark seam again. And you can see we've effectively unwrapped our mesh. Now, if I select all the polygons, press U on the keyboard, then unwrap, this is what we're getting. Now, the problem with something like this is that it's actually stretched. And this one, again, it's not very efficient with how it's using its tessellation. Well, its texel density. So what we want to do for this particular one, as an example, we will select probably around the middle part, so this polygon, go into vertex select mode and select these 2 points. Now, if we press right click and align X, you can see that it's straightened it quite nicely. We can then select these 2 points and again align X, then select the top 2 points, align Y, and then these 2 and align Y. Now, with that done, go into polygon mode, which is free on the keyboard, select this polygon, then press L while hovering over it. This will select the entire UV island. Press right click on the keyboard, on the mouse, and then follow active quads. And now you have a nice unwrapped shape. And if we press this button over here, which is called the UV sync selection, and if you select this island with L, well, 1 second, I'm just trying to, okay, that button wasn't pressed for some reason. So you can see that this is the interior that we've done. This over here is the exterior. Now we have this side over here. Let's try and do the same thing there. Now, generally, you want to select the polygon that's opposing to where the seam is. And in this case, it would be kind of that polygon. So let me just select these 2 points, right click and align X. And you can see we've got a problem. You know, what the hell happened there? Let's Control Z. Let's right click and try align Y. This is again causing me this problem, so it's not really aligning properly. And this is good because I wanted to show you guys how you can fix this. Let me just drag this a bit further down. So what you need to do, rather than selecting these 2 points, right clicking and aligning, you need to press S on the keyboard. Sorry, you need to first change this point in here to individual origin, and then S, X, 0. And that's not the right axis, so it's S, Y, 0. There you go, it's fixed, right? S, Y, 0, fixed. And then we select these 2 points, S, X, 0. And then these 2 points, S, X, 0. And you can see that that's fixed it now. And I can do the same thing what I've done previously. For some reason, this has messed up these. I don't really know what's happened there. I think I may have selected something by mistake. Yeah, let me just see, when did I cause this issue? Because I must have caused it. Yeah. Oh, okay, I see. I've literally moved the circle. So I've moved this circle and I moved those polygons as well. So let me just quickly do that again. Select those 2 points, S, Y, 0. So you got to be careful when, S, Y, 0. You've got to be careful when selecting the points to make sure you're not dragging something else at the same time. Otherwise, you're just going to mess up everything. But it's good to make mistakes because you learn from them. Okay, now you can see it's quite nice. We can select all of these and then go to UV and just say, pack my island. And this is it. This is, unwrapping. Now, see, I've got a bit of a problem here. Again, I think I may have moved some points by mistake, but you know what? Not a biggie. This is not going to be visible anyway. I am just going to fix this by moving these points around like that. Okay, that's not even going to be, not even going to matter. That's a little mistake there. Okay. So we've got these UVs like that. Nice. Honestly, I have no idea how I move these points, but there you have it. I wouldn't even call it a rookie mistake. I would just call it a mistake by moving some points by mistake. See, this is happening again. What is going on? So I move 1 point. Oh, I see. See that? So I moved that point, but it's also moving the other point. Isn't that just not so nice? Yeah, I think that's what's basically messing it up for me. You see, when I move that, I wonder if I click these and just click straighten. No, it won't do it. Interesting. Very interesting that it's doing that. I wonder why. If you guys know why it's doing that, let me know. To be honest, I've never seen that happening before. I was able to move points along without any problems, but I don't even have, this proximity sort of movement, so I don't really understand what's going on. Anyway, right, I digress. This is not the important bit here. So we've got the UV map done. Let's go back into shading. We can select our cylinder and press new on the material. We've got a universal material over here, but again, we don't need that. What I'm going to add is a diffuse material and hook the material output of the diffuse in there. What we then want to do is bring a displacement, texture displacement, change this to an 8K, and I definitely recommend you guys use 8K textures for displacement. Once that's done, maybe put your height to 0.1 just so you can see something, and then this mid-level to 0.7, and you need to bring in a texture. So luckily I do have a texture. Let me just bring that back. I am going to use, actually now I need to bring my texture from here. Okay, there we go. Got a texture, and I can put that into the output of this texture, and you will see that now it has done what I wanted, which is basically creating a well, it's displaced the mesh, right? And you can see that in there, and this is the effect that we're getting. Now I would say this looks a lot better than Blender Cycles, by the way. I think Octane looks a lot better when it comes to displacements. You can see all those crunchy details in there, they look so nice. Now what we can do is we can add a 2D transformation, 2D, which is like mapping, but it's called 2D transformation. Put it into the transform, and we can bring that to a 0.2, and this will just add a lot more. It will make the texture to go to 0.2 of its original scale, and you can see all of those details in there, right? And if I press 0 to go on the camera view, this is what we're getting. Now I have a shortcut for walk navigation, so I'm just gonna control my camera in walk navigation mode. Okay, so that's nice. Let me just change this to a 3D viewport and select my sphere, and then just play around a bit with it. So let me just try and be a bit more dramatic with the scene. In the material for the light, let's try a 10,000. Is 10,000 the right one? Something like that. We could probably bring more light in if we go into our world setting and maybe put a, now let's just put a 1. No, I'll just leave that to a 2. So there's still not enough light in there. I definitely want to bring up more light, and I think that we can do that with the texture. So actually, let me just put this back to 1 and increase the texture to 1, and you can see that now this is bringing a lot more light into the scene. 500 maybe, and more texture. Yeah, okay. Bringing this light over like that. Now, one thing that for example, we want to block the light over here. What you can do is in this, I'm using this small viewport down here. I'm just gonna add a cube, and I'm gonna lift the cube. I'm trying to lift it upwards, so let me just bring it like that. Okay, so I'm effectively blocking light, so it creates this sort of effect. And the cube, you can do the same thing. You can go in its view properties and disable it from camera visibility, but it will still cast its shadow, or you can obviously deactivate the shadow if you don't want to see it. But now if we go into render mode, so press F12 for rendering, you can see that we're getting roughly, what is it, around 10 samples, 20 samples every second and a half or so. So I believe this will take to fully render, I believe this will take roughly 20-30 seconds, maybe something like that. It really depends. I mean, Octane rendering, much like other like cycles or whatever, is really affected by how many lights you've got in the scene and how much geometry. But look at these, look at these details, right? Look at these, right? And this is gonna look a lot better once all these samples are done. We can obviously work on the exposure and then the shadows if we want to get more dramatic views. I mean, look at all that detail, right? I know this is a 1080p image, so if we cancel this render and we go over here into our settings for over here into our dimensions, we can put that to 200%, no compression, and we'll get a nice 4K image out of this, which again is going to look quite nice. And that's pretty much how you set up something like this in Octane Render, and I think it's a very powerful tool, especially to do artwork, single image artwork. Obviously you can do a video if you want, but again, that will take some time in rendering, regardless if Octane is faster than Cycles or not. I've not really done a benchmark, Octane versus Cycle X or anything like that. I just know that Octane is faster purely because it's using this this sort of approach of a server side kind of rendering that then pretty much displays on your display via the network, I guess. I think I'm not sure I'm explaining this correctly, but you know, there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, really powerful stuff. And here's the render done. It took about 3 minutes and 50 seconds at 4K. I wouldn't say I've used enough samples. There's still a bit of noise here and there, but that can be changed through the settings. You're just gonna have to play around with the settings to get the better result. But look at all that detail, guys. I mean, look at all the displacement and how well it looks and how, you know, accurate it seems to be as well. You know, there's so much detail in here. I really love it. You know, it's really transformational for epic scenes, you know, epic size scenes where you're sort of, the detail is there, but at the same time it's still abstract in a way. Now, I've gone along and I've added some extra bits in here in the scene. And what you're noticing is I've just created these 4 legs out of, you know, extrusions out of the cylinder. You quickly UV unwrap them. And then I added this sphere, which has this material. It's a diffuse material with a texture, a bump, and a displacement. All of these 3 are done from this texture in Photoshop, which is from that website that I showed you previously. It's literally Ceres, is that what you call it? So it's this planet, 4K texture. I've taken it off from here, brought it into Photoshop, gone into filters, and then I just went to 3D and first generated a height map. I just pressed this button and OK, and then the second one generate a normal map. Again, press this button and press OK, and Photoshop pretty much does this texture in those 2 formats. Then I've exported the 2 images and brought them in here. Pretty much the same sort of setup. I'm just gonna put this at 8K, or actually 4K since it's a 4K texture. We go back into our render, and this is what I'm getting. You know, if I get really close here, you'll notice, obviously I would need to do like a render to properly see it, but that's kind of the, you know, I've got these sort of legs coming out of the station. Let's say the station is now going to, I don't know, devour the planet or whatever, but that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, you can see how easily that was. You can put something like this together in less than, I don't know, 10 minutes if you really know the process in and out, the workflow. Imagine what you could do in a couple of hours by just playing around, having light and so on. Now, one thing, you know, just a final sort of topic that we could do on this. You know, I'm going to show you something very interesting. Let's say I want to add a, well, actually, you know, I can just duplicate the cylinder, right? Scale it down a bit, bring it outwards like that. Quickly go into edit mode and select this, select all of this and just delete it. And now I'm left literally with this outer layer sort of. I think it's just the that final bit there, which I can delete as well. So I've got an outer layer sort of cylinder, which is great. I can bring this outwards, maybe something like that. The original cylinder that I built is a bit skewered off, as you can see, so it's not properly aligning, but that's fine. I wouldn't, you know, obviously for this particular thing, we don't really care. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove my displacement. I don't need a displacement. I don't need any of this really. Maybe, I mean, I need a transformation node. I'll just delete these and bring in a different kind of texture into the scene. Let me just... I'm going to bring this one, which is, if you open it, you'll notice that it's got some elements in here, black and white and so on. Now, obviously I'm going to show you how I generated all of these in just a second, but just bringing this texture over in here, I can connect the transform like that. Oh, sorry, I can connect the transform. I can also connect the diffuse, but then I can use this and bring it into the opacity as well. And now if I go into render mode, what you'll notice is that I am, oh, sorry, I have essentially done something really bad here. Let me just go back and to my original sort of setup of materials. Because what I've done is I forgot to add a new material. So with the cylinder selected, the second one, just press this button up here to create a new material. And now I can pretty much delete all of that, bring my texture in, connect it over into my diffuse, connect it over into my opacity, and just the transform there would really help as well. And what you're noticing is I'm getting these sort of outside areas of texture. And I'm just going to maybe, yeah, bring that gamma down to maybe something like a 0 or something, or maybe a 0.5, so it's very visible. And you can see these sort of elements come out from there as if they are kind of like platforms of some kind, you know, and you can see that they're also going to be casting shadow. I think they're casting a very faint shadow. I could potentially go into the modifiers and add a solidify, I believe, and that should help, because that's going to solidify that texture as well, so it's going to look better. And as you can see, I've just added some extra geometry on here by just using a very plain cylinder. Obviously, if I want to, I can put this into the displacement as well, which will then add displacement to all of that as well, although using solidify and displacement at the same time might not be such an amazing idea. So let me just use a displacement, and that should then work, you know. So I'm gonna render that as well. But let me just bring in my GS displacement. So this is on the website link will be in the description below, but you can, like I said to you guys, you can generate all of these height maps that I've generated before. Just go in here, JSplacement, and select Classic, 2, Velvet, whichever you want. They're pretty self-explanatory. But if I use 2 and I click this, you'll see that it automatically generates height map. So you can save this as a height map or as a color. You've also got a colorizer if you want to colorize all of these things as well. So that's quite neat as well if you want to have black and white or you want to have some color on these. But you can save a normal, you can save a height, press generate to get new sort of new looks. And this background brightness helps you create alphas quite easily. For example, we can take the iterations down to 10 and maybe something like that, and you can see now I'm getting smaller elements and with a lot of black area, which we can use that as an alpha or as a complete sort of, you know, zero, no displacement whatsoever in that area. So JSDisplacement is a free software, very, very powerful, very useful as well. You can create wires with it and all sorts of things that you can then add to your scene. And, you know, if I press 0 on the keyboard to go back in the camera view, which is very important, because if you're not in camera view, you're not going to get things like glare and so on. I'm actually, you know, if I press F11, this is the render that we had before, and I'm going to make a new render for slot 2 and finally preview that with my closing thoughts on this, and that will be the end of the tutorial. And that is for that. That's it. That's render 2. So render 1 and render 2. As you can see, not a lot has really changed the scene apart from having this planet in the middle of it, and obviously these sort of areas. And you can see what the alpha sort of texture does to that cylinder, and we're sort of faking some geometry in here. Obviously, this can be done a lot better if you put a bit of time and effort into it. But this is just me doing a very quick sort of, you know, generating this very quickly, and you can see the result that we're getting just by doing that. But I do hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope you've learned something. Please feel free to contact me on Discord or in the comment section below. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, consider buying some of my content if you want to support me. I am really looking forward to see your creations. Please share them with me on Discord, and I can definitely help you with some suggestions myself. I do appreciate when you guys approach me with questions and with requesting feedback or wanting to help me or to be helped. So please feel free to contact me on Facebook, Discord, YouTube, wherever you want, wherever you can find me. Just contact me, and I'm sure we can have a fruitful conversation. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Take care.